Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of Keep Wise with Keeping Lee. And today we have Amira joining us again today. Amira, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's so wonderful to be back and chatting with everyone, and I'm excited about today's conversation.
Okay, great. And today we have on screen joining us Sara Newsom from the Hub. And Sarah will describe to us, what the hub is, because they have a nice acronym with it. So we'll jump right in. So Sarah, tell us about the hub and what you guys do at the hub.
Sure. So the hub actually stands for the Homeownership Urban Blueprint. The website is thehubga.org, and it's actually stood up by the Urban League of Greater Atlanta, which has been around for over 100 years. So this is an initiative that has been put on by a collaborative of nonprofits in the region to provide homeownership education for taking the potential home buyer to the closing table. And in essence, also closing the racial gap in the real estate ecosystem. So what we are doing is that we set up a marketplace. So the Homeownership Urban Blueprint also contains a marketplace of real estate agents, contractors, insurance agents, closing attorneys, everyone that you would essentially touch in your journey for home ownership. But the first step that we also are helping with is connecting you to a HUD certified counselor, and that is where the Urban League comes in. So the Urban League is a HUD certified counseling agency, and on the hub, we have a form that will connect you immediately to a HUD certified counselor once you fill out that form. And then also we stand up a calendar that is going to provide you with all of our events and classes that the Urban League provides, but also that our partners provide as well. We also offer a HUD certified 8-hour homebuyer counseling class that enables you to get a certificate to potentially qualify for down payment assistance. The hub also educates you on what down payment assistance is and also connects you to the agencies and the mortgage lenders that can provide these different kinds of programs.
Fantastic. So it sounds like the hub is a full service place for those who really want to jump into the homeowner experience.
Yes. And then so we also have pieces as well for home preservation, which are more along the lines with the current homeowner. So home preservation can be anything from simple projects like landscaping or to roofing, larger projects, adding on ramps for those who are in wheelchairs as they are aging in place in their homes, to heirs property, tangled titles, and estate planning. So but then also, of course, we have the marketplace. So we have our contractors, and then we have our nonprofits that are going to be involved in that home preservation piece as well.
Thanks for the breaking that down. And sorry, I think about my own home ownership journey as you were discussing it, and it I was I wish I had something like this when I bought my own home, to help me for that end to end experience and to help me really think through, because a large part of this whole home ownership conversation, really revolves around being able to get into the home, which for a lot of people is the hard part. But then you are taking it beyond that and helping us to be able to um, preserve that experience once I get into that home. So just thinking about my own experience, it reminded me of, hey, I wish there was something like I could tap into that with my own homeowner journey. Um, and I think that that is fantastic for anybody entering the process of buying a home. So why was this initiative started?
This initiative was started in this to work towards closing the racial gap in the real estate ecosystem. So our goal is to put 5,000 people of color into homes by 2027. So providing that credit counseling, financial literacy, getting those who are, whether they're close to being mortgage ready or not even close or not even thinking about it, but educating them on, how home ownership can springboard them into wealth building as well. So I started my journey in home ownership and affordable housing in 2011. I rode my bike cross country with an organization called Bike and Build. And so we literally did that. We biked from Charleston, South Carolina to Santa Cruz, raising funds and awareness for the affordable housing. And then also partnered with multiple organizations in some of the larger cities to build anything from shingling, flooring, painting. And so that was 81 days on the road. And then I ended up moving to Atlanta. I did an AmeriCorps year at Habitat for Humanity. And then I kind of jumped around different nonprofits, all with the, what I call like the three pillars of creating a safe and sound community and a stable life and stable home, which are food security, transportation, and housing. Most recently, when I came into the Urban League, I literally Googled affordable housing jobs. And so here I am. I also launched the bike share here in Atlanta. I'm an avid cyclist, clearly based on what I've just told you. And then recently I was just in Utah riding with the Fuller Center and did a couple build days with them as well. So I'm just really connected to the work, whether it's actually using my hands or my brain, or so now, of course, with the website, we work with functionality and visibility, providing and trying to do our best to disseminate that information amongst the community. And I think that I know what Daniel was alluding to a little bit about my journey. So I did use down payment assistance to buy my first home. And like you said, getting into the home can be its own journey. And so I can share that information as well. But I think from a home preservation standpoint, and then once getting into the home, I've been dealing with mold issues. And so I had to go through mold remediation. And then, so what I've learned through that is that they take away, they don't put back. So I had way more mold than I thought I did. And looking back, I wish I would have taken the appropriate steps that at the time I was not educated on, and done it not a little bit, but a bit differently than I have been dealing with now. So essentially, I had some mold, they cleaned it up, and then we closed. I did a mold test after I closed, and the levels were dangerously high. Had already moved in, all my stuff, my bed, everything's soft, that the mold would love to absorb. And then also found out I had water intrusion. So they ripped down the walls, some of the ceilings, and then I had them all put back. But hadn't decided how I was going to deal with the water intrusion. So about 6 months later, I was kind of going and back and forth with the water and how much it was going to cost and if I could afford it and what were my options, the power of three. So we always get 3 quotes from the different contractors. And of course, you're feeling the vibe and the energy of the person that you're working with. This person's going to be inside your home. It's a very vulnerable situation. So I ended up getting a French drain put in to help with the water intrusion. And when they did the French drain, they took down 2 entire rooms of walls and all of the drywall, and put up a really lovely, beautiful waterproofing barrier, put in the French drain. And then so for the third time in those 2 rooms, I had no walls. And so that's where I am now. It's been 10 months with sort of this back and forth. Of course, from a financial perspective, I had to pay for one thing and then re-up and then pay for another thing. And then, of course, we're all have lives and travel and go on vacation with our families. This doesn't happen super quickly. So I guess in conclusion, my lesson here for those of you who do get in a home is to do the mold test first, so you can understand the gravity of the situation. I would recommend doing the mold test before you even close. And, seeing is this a house that I really love? Is this it for me? And I want to tear out walls and do mold remediation and bleaching and all of this stuff before I move all of my stuff in, because it's definitely a scenario where I've felt not settled in this massive, purchase that you make once in a lifetime. So yeah, that's sort of my mold story. Hopefully I'll be able to give you the end of that mold story at some point. But I now have walls back up. I should be painting this weekend. Sanding and keeping it clean has been, a struggle. If you've dealt with drywall and sanding, you know that it's everywhere you didn't think it was. So hopefully we can close that chapter at some point. But I think, again, it's this you don't know what you don't know theme. And that theme applies to everything and anything that the hub provides. So down payment assistance. What is down payment assistance? Never heard of it. Can I apply for this? What do I need to apply for this? Credit counseling, financial literacy. What are your options around mortgages and negotiating rates down, and all these things. So our main goal, of course, at the Urban League, but also with the Homeownership Urban Blueprint, is really just disseminating this information and gathering the information, gathering the content, and then also providing it to our communities.
So, Sara, thank you for sharing your very personal story. I think that, and I know Amira could relate to a lot of what you said, because a few episodes ago, she shared her story. And I do think that you've nailed it on the head. You don't know what you don't know. And I can see, as you're speaking, that a lot of what you're doing now helps yourself in the I have lived this, therefore I can help others to be able to understand what hurdles they can avoid, because I lived through them and I passed through them. But I want to kind of go back to when you talked about your own story about getting into this, and how it has impacted you, and how you've really been, I would call you a houser, or very housing adjacent for a lot of your career. How does, I would say, your past, the stuff that you've done in your past, help you, and even with what you currently are experiencing? Because I thought that you may have passed that experience, but you're still living through it. But how has those moments helped you to be able to build out the resources for the hub in terms of thinking about it and what other homeowners may need in their own home ownership journey?
So I have a couple of thoughts. For one, from a housing perspective, it's always been a passion of mine to empower people. I think a lot of times people have a really hard time with just throwing themselves into a situation. It's, I don't know, so I'm not going to do it. And I'm not going to lie, there are times in my life where, for instance, putting up drywall, didn't really want to research it, didn't really have the time. So it's, best to go to the subject matter expert who's going to actually do that correctly. But with housing, it was something that interests me. I had gone through it, different buying and selling opportunities when I was younger. And so just being in the community with my friends and just telling them essentially, word of mouth has been the oldest way to spread news since the beginning of time. And so just putting myself in the community and talking to my friends and letting them know, it costs exponentially more to rent throughout from, the 5 to 10 years that you're renting versus, investing in something that's going to be yours. So that I think is the first part of the question. Can you remind me what the second part was?
So the second part was really in terms of your own experience and what you are going through and how that is helping you in terms of thinking through how you build a hub. Because I can see a lot of similarities in terms of your own experience and what you're trying to help other homeowners or potential homeowners really think through, especially around the preservation piece.
Minimizing stressors. For sure. Minimizing stressors. No one wants to spend a year of their life just doing this, dealing with the same issue and over and over and over again. I'm also a landlord, so I deal with people constantly. I, have different lists of lessons that I've learned and have working documents that I created 5 years ago that are constantly changing, and working with different people, different personalities. So just kind of creating that blueprint to minimize stressors, creating a sense of course, nothing's ever going to be easy, but of course, at the same time, knowledge is power. So just creating like a really systematic way to go from A to B. And then once you get to B, where do we go from here? And you can go in multiple different directions. You might just have a family and that's it for you. And you move in and this is what it is. For me, it was like, I'm very, I don't like to sit still. So I was like, what's next? How can I do this? Can I make money off of this? And then I just really like people. So my tenants, for probably the last 11 years, I've actually been like a live-in landlord with my tenants. So I'm still sort of like living that roommate life. This is the first time I've moved into a separate unit. And then just managing that from afar. So again, sharing my experiences. I'm always, happy to have coffee with people or have lunch with people to share my trials and tribulations, but also my wins. And it's something I really enjoy. So just sharing that, throughout either like my micro or macro community.
Fantastic.
I love to hear about the wins, and I'd be curious to hear from you, Sarah. You talked about some of the challenges, some of the wins. So if you're talking to someone who is thinking about purchasing a home, what are like 2 or 3 things that you would say to encourage them through the journey? Because the journey could be really long, as well as it could also be really daunting. So what are 2 or 3 things that you would say?
I would say that the different things that I've learned about the different parts of the city. When I first moved to Atlanta, I moved 11 times in 2 years. So I was renting, of course. So I was learning a lot about the city and learning about how I wanted to structure my life around that. So for 4 years, I worked downtown at a nearby building. I bought a condo in Old Fourth Ward. I am an avid cyclist. I want to be downtown. I like to go out to eat sometimes. I like breweries with my friends. So just creating sort of like this, I'm going to use blueprint again, but creating this blueprint about how I want to live my life and how I'm fitting housing and transportation into that, into that map. So now I'm in Southwest Atlanta and I'm learning more about that area, the history of the area, different locations and landmarks that I want to know about. I'm an avid public transportation person, so I like to be near MARTA. So again, really just learning about my city, really learning about, what makes Atlanta, Atlanta. And then I guess from more of a business perspective, it does to a certain extent give me a lot of purpose. I have some tenants / roommates that I've been friends with for years. I've had tenants that have lived with me 3 different times. So it kind of gives me this warm, fuzzy feeling that I'm doing something right. I'm also providing affordable housing, clean, safe, and secure affordable housing for people who, don't want to spend $2,000 a month. And, it's great if you get the pool and the gym and all of that, but there are other things that, make people happy in their day-to-day life.
Fantastic. Um, so, Sarah, when you look at what you're doing at the hub, and you've connected and you've spoken quite a bit about your own experiences, um, what do homeowners, especially considering the current market that we are in, we're in a very high interest rate environment, a very we have a very limited amount of supply. So you're contracted on two ends of the conversation. How do what do homeowner or potential homeowners who walk into the door at the hub, what should they expect? Because one of the things that you would have to, I would say, navigate around is ensuring that you manage expectations. So how do these potential homeowners really, how do you provide them that kind of guidance to help them on that journey, understanding that you're not going to come into the hub and then by next week you have a house, but how do you help them really think about it, over a longer term period of time to set goals, expectations, all of those things?
Yeah, I think the hub essentially is just opening the door. That's what the hub is. So we are taking them to step 1. And step 1 could be different from everyone for everyone. They go straight to a credit counseling class, which is on Zoom. They can take multiple, financial literacy, et cetera, et cetera. They're gonna sort of learn where they fit in the blueprint, in the journey, as they go through those steps. So credit counseling, meeting with the HUD certified counselor, and there's a lot of self-discovery. There has to be. You have to jump on the websites and jump on the hub and off the hub onto our down payment assistance agencies and see what it is for them to offer and really educate yourself on what's out there, what's happening. And then, of course, there's the marketplace. So you can connect with a lender, connect with a real estate agent who can, of course, dive way more deeply than I can or the hub can, just by having that conversation.
So the resources that you provide really open the door and create this very easy pathway, or an easier pathway, I would say, because
Yeah, we're giving you the way to get the information.
yeah, because it's the pathway, like you rightly pointed out, could be different for everybody else. But as you were speaking, one of those things that I remembered, and there are all these stats that are out there that says, hey, persons spend way more time trying to figure out how to buy a TV rather than looking for a mortgage. And when I first saw the stat, I thought, that's crazy. This is the most important asset that you will ever buy. So shouldn't you be taking a lot more time to be able to research, because you're making a lifelong commitment? But what I see you providing at the hub really would help me to think through that. So how again, looking at, especially at the starting point, I want to get into the home. How do homeowners really navigate that to the point of, okay, we come to the hub, we look at the resources. Is there anything else that you do to help me feel at ease so that I don't rush into a decision?
Yeah, so the counseling is very, very, very deep. You have to come with your pay stubs. They run your credit report. They go through all of your history. You go through, like we talked about earlier. Is there a part of the city you want to be in, and is that attainable? What is your debt to income ratio? So they do a full deep dive, so you can really be completely understanding about what is possible with where you're currently standing and where you could be standing. Let's say if you do need some credit repair, this is where I'm at now. This is where you could be in 6 to 8 months. And so, like I said, it's a deep thorough dive into budget planning, and then credit repair and enhancement as well. And again, we have these classes weekly sponsor that are set up by the Urban League.
This is great. Can you tell me, what are some things that homeowners don't take advantage of in the process? Like, you see all the resources, so you know all the things that are available. But what are a few things that people probably don't realize that they should be taking advantage of, or you wish that they did?
Man, I wish I knew and had all the resources. But I think one of the biggest ones is down payment assistance. People, one, don't even know that it's out there. I think the big misconception is I make too little money, I make too much money. But again, that's going to be part of that self-discovery, is looking at what programs there are, actually picking up the phone and calling a lender, talking to a real estate agent about maybe certain experiences that they might have had. And also, of course, calling the down payment assistance agency. And of course, I'll keep going back to the counseling. So, having that conversation with the HUD certified counselor, because they've done this hundreds and hundreds of times. But yeah, I think people don't understand down payment assistance.
What's the biggest misconception?
I think that the biggest misconception, as far from what I've experienced and conversations that I've had, is people think they make too much money. Or what if I don't want to have the house for 5 years or 10 years? And not every down payment assistance program is, you're not all locked into every single one. And there's so many different ones out there that are provided for different levels of income.
But, and as Amir asked that question, I think one of those misconceptions that I saw recently, or that jogged my mind recently, was that a lot of persons say, hey, you need to have 20% down. And there are programs where you just have to put 8% down. There are also special purpose credit programs. Oh, you see, and Sarah's, putting it out there, and zero. And so I think that, the whole education piece, which is why I love, where you guys have started with the hub. But I think that, it is critical that, as you rightly say, we give people that information, because you go down this line of thinking, and it also depends on who you're hanging out with. So if you have had a bad experience, or your parents had a bad experience at home ownership, you may not necessarily been doing the research to figure it out. And so I think that conversations like these help, create more transparency and create the information that people need. But
I think that's sorry. I think that's a really good example. It's something I was thinking about, the TV example as well, because I know people who research and read reviews all day long about TVs or an Xbox or, whatever it is that they're going to buy. But a house is so huge. I think it takes up a lot of space in your brain. There's so many unanswered questions. There's so many what ifs. But as you mentioned, like, if your parents had a bad example, and I think for me, an example would be like, flying. Say your parents didn't fly, they were afraid of flying. Somebody has always been afraid of flying. You might not even take the time to do the research or look up the stats or see, look up, what are the mechanics of the plane at X, Y, and Z. Maybe you just drive everywhere for the rest of your life, or you take a plane everywhere for the rest of your life, or you don't travel as much as maybe you wanted to because you sort of are feeling pigeonholed in this way because, my parents didn't like flying. I don't like flying. I'm afraid of flying. And I think we just get caught in this sort of circular thought pattern of like, that's too much. That's too big. And there are resources and education around a way to make you feel more comfortable to taking that first step towards homeownership and that first step towards, taking that trip that maybe you never thought you would take because of the experiences you had as a child.
But Sarah, and I love that how you've equated that. But I would also say that it's just a huge thing, though. Buying a house is a huge thing, and I think that the hugeness of it sometimes overwhelms people, and it's not overwhelming in a okay, well, I can do this. It's overwhelming in terms of what if this goes wrong and that goes wrong. And I think that you guys are really focused on that. But I think that even one of the things, so, I'm going to jump later into the process or further along the process. So we've gotten down payment assistance in, we've gotten credit counseling in, we know what to do. But then comes the part of, okay, I move into this house. And so there's insurance, which is, if you're doing the research, you realize it's going up. I've seen insurance rates double or triple for some people in the last year, which can also be a deterrent. You have house taxes, which again is a problem. There is an article that came out recently that says approximately 92% of millennials who bought between 20 and 21 were surprised at the cost of home ownership. And so, again, I think that we have to do a better job on the front end of informing people because everything is going up. The cost, you have to figure out the cost because rent could go up to tomorrow, which you didn't plan for, but unless you're going to move, you still have to pay that rent. And so how can we, again, and what are you doing at the hub to help me once I'm in the home to be able to think about those experiences and how I can really manage them to have the best outcome through home ownership?
Well, we're partnering with people like you to prepare people for the home preservation part. And then we have post-home buyer education, of course, going back to the budgeting and the financial literacy part as well. And then also, stuff like this, sharing our experiences. I think also too, sometimes people are just so straightforward with where they think that path is going to go, and you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable sometimes. Got to get creative. If something monstrous happens, maybe you get a roommate or figure it out. People are really, I think they just think they're going to buy this house and it's going to be smooth sailing. And so, having real conversation. And I think, I don't know, I'm really excited about keeping Lee. I think it could teach me a lot. I think it could teach everyone a lot. But again, going back to that, you don't know what you don't know thing. So I think the budgeting is really important, and we really hone in on budgeting pre and post. So you're understanding, how much money you should be putting away a month. And that's, again, where the debt to income ratio comes in. Obviously we're not setting up anyone to be house poor. So understanding this is how much you can afford, plus this, plus this, plus this, plus putting money away monthly to create a buffer.
Well, I'm glad you said it. I think you're right? Like what Kevin is offering to do for consumers or homeowners is really valuable to help them do the process. But I think the partnership that what you all are doing to help setting up folks is really, really important as well, because First of all, people got to find the house. They got to enjoy the house. They got to be able to live in the house. And then they got to be able to handle any unexpected things that might happen within the house and understand how to leverage and use this as an asset and not get so overwhelmed.
Right.
I do have one question. One of the things I was just thinking of is like, what are some of the things you're hearing from people? Because it is a very emotional process. It's a big deal for them. What do you think is like the number one thing that holds people back from going through this journey?
I mean, again, I definitely think it's just a super overwhelming process. I mean, money for sure. Like Daniel said, that misconception that you have to have 20% down. I mean, when I used down payment assistance, I didn't put any money down. I used down payment assistance. I had to pay for my appraiser and my inspection and some other things. I don't know. It was a very long time ago. But I was able to engage with a down payment agency and take a home buyer education class and do that. I will say from my own experience, just because I'm not really on the buying side with clients, but I mentioned that I'd moved 11 times when I moved to Atlanta. And when I was contemplating buying my condo, I was having commitment issues. I was like, what am I going to do when a year is up or 6 months is up and I don't have to move? Sometimes stability is scary. You get used to sort of living this lifestyle of go, go, go. And now all of a sudden you're just here. I remember on my 1 year anniversary of my purchase, texting my mother being like, so do I move now? So yeah, I think there's commitment issues as well. Is Atlanta it for you? Is Chicago it for you? Is LA it for you? And I've also had those conversations with friends as well. Like, well, you don't have to stay here. You can buy and sell, you can buy and rent. It can be a lifelong investment for you. I'll manage it for you. No, just kidding. But yeah, I think there's definitely obviously like the money issue and then a little bit of the emotional feeling stuck in that one place, which for some is scary and for some is exciting.
Yeah. I'm listening to you, Sara, and I think that the whole conversation of the emotional aspect of it is something that, again, we don't discuss enough, because on some level it's taboo to discuss. Well, number one, your emotions or something, but number two, I think that the level of commitment required. And I think it's similar to the amount of research I have to do. And I love that you said there is the stability part of it, but there is also the, do I want to make this firm commitment? Because
and the fear of failing. Because it's so confusing and overwhelming. You could have this, crippling fear of being like, well, what if it doesn't work out?
But I love what you also said about the uncertainty or embracing uncertainty. And I think that, part of the home ownership journey is like that, because the funny thing though is that once you get into the house, you think, okay, it's going to be great. It's going to work out fine. And which is why even your own experience, and I love that you shared, about your mold experience, because moving into the house, while you think it would provide stability, doesn't necessarily just give you that. It's not a panacea. Yeah, things are going to break. Things are going to get old. Things are going to have to be replaced. Could be some natural disaster. Amira had, the act of God with the fire. So there are things that happen. And so you have to be, constantly be prepared in your home ownership journey. Is like, understanding that not everything will go right, but still I have to do this or I should do this because I think that for me at least, it's the opportunity for generational wealth or the opportunity for me being able to own this asset and pay less in taxes. What is your why? I would say, how do you encompass your why, and then ultimately um, working backward. And I think that what you've defined helps us to, help people to think about that. But I think that these are things that we really talk about enough. I don't think we talk about the emotions enough, especially when something goes wrong. Amira could tell us all about those emotions when, watching your kids having to grow up, in different environments because of a fire or whatever. I can tell you about, a bad appraisal and what that does. But we all have, but it doesn't mean that we've abandoned home ownership. It means that we have to work through it. And is it that something that you guys at the hub are really enforcing in a really tangible manner?
Are we enforcing being in touch with your emotions?
Well, especially about home ownership. Especially about home ownership.
Yes, no, of course. I mean, I'd like to touch all of that. And I think that's why having this type of content and having these types of conversations, and it's what the hub is for. It's to share this, to share the oopsies and to share the wins and to share the lessons. And that's what the hub is hosting. Yeah. You were saying something about, I had a thought and it escaped me. But yeah, I mean, that's essentially what we're doing, is creating a safe space for people to share. I mean, because also talking about money is very emotional. It's also like, I mean, the second that I'm writing down my social security number on something, like, what's happening? Where is that going? And now this stranger knows everything that's in my bank account, my social security number, where I live, everything about my life essentially. And it's a lot. It's a very, people are full of different colorful personalities, and taking on each single one, just as a number is never going to work. So, if somebody picked up the phone on the hub and called me, it goes straight to my cell phone. I'm happy to have that conversation. I might not know everything. I don't know everything. I'm not the SME on credit counseling. I'm not an SME on drywall, which we've already discussed. I'm also not a real estate agent. I can tell you what I know and the experiences that I've gone through and the lessons that I've learned. But what we can do, and I keep going back to this, is connect you to someone who does. And that's what the marketplace is for. And that's what the counselors are for.
So, Sara, we are almost at time. Mira, any other questions for Sara?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for doing the work. You may not be a real estate agent, but you are in the business of helping people have a better relationship with their homes. And we need more people, advocates, allies that consumers can work with and be a part of and have a good positive experience. So glad that you were able to share about what you do.
Thanks, Amira. It was nice to meet you as well.
So my last question for you, Sara, is like, you're at the hub. I don't know if it's your dream job, but my question to you is like, if you had a magic wand, what would you do to really make the home ownership journey and experience better for potential home buyers and current homeowners in the Atlanta ecosystem?
Creating a palatable way to be educated and prepared for what's about to come. I'll go back to the mold, right? I don't think I absorbed and really understood the severity of the situation. So if I had a magic wand and could have implanted into my brain these specific steps that I probably should have done and someone telling me this is really serious. Let's do it now, or not doing it all and move into another. Keep searching. But again, creating a palatable way to have the knowledge and information to be able to cover all the corners of preparation and future planning. I hope that made sense.
And I think that, yeah, I think that, and funny enough, I think that that's what you guys are doing at the hub, and I think it's you're also kind of projecting aspirationally in terms of how it eventually unfolds, so that more buyers and more homeowners can have better resources. Because I think that is, essentially, you guys are focused on, vendors and stuff like that also. But it's really about understanding those resources that are available. And some of those resources would be in the physical, in terms of, okay, these are the vendors you should talk to, but some of it is also kind of the emotional support, like the credit counseling and stuff like that, which should also help me to be able to really think through. So I think that you guys are, on the way to doing that, and congratulations to you guys at the hub for really providing that resource. And
I think the resources are also the people. Like, the resources are the vendors. The marketplace is specifically curated around people who are highly recommended in the ecosystem, highly trusted. You can call them, I can call them. I mean, I've been trying to be very intentional about who goes up there. We're not doing any Googling of this, that, and the other. It's creating an ecosystem of trusted, respectful, mission-driven human beings and businesses.
Yeah, fantastic, and thank you for that and for what you're doing. And I think that that's a good place for us to end. I love the mission, because I think the mission is what we are all about. When Amira and I first talked about how we could collaborate on doing this podcast, our mission was really about helping homeowners with the information. And I think that with you and what you guys are doing at the hub, it's really similar in terms of helping homeowners in Atlanta. So thank you again, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to spend and talk to us at Keep Wise with Keeping.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.